The family structure would have been the easiest way to make the world a better place, but it is under attack. You can't treat what God created alongside you terribly and want to have a good relationship with God. You cannot hide under the guise of Christianity and perpetrate evil and say you are covered by grace. It takes you to sit down and ask yourself, who am I? What am I doing here? Christian will tell you Christianity is the only way to get to heaven and all of that and all of that. The world is big. Sometimes the system is just set up for you to fail. They don't really want you to prosper. If that is not the case, why are these guys in school? Why are they being locked up in the classroom for 5-6 years? The other day we were traveling and the University of Benin were rioting because BEDC cut their light off. This is a school that has electrical electronics department, faculty of engineering. You are telling me that you can't put 10 students and pick two students per level, 100 level, 200 level, 300 level, and sponsor them on a research to create solar that can power the whole of universe. If you don't know yourself, you cannot say you want to know God. It has been proven over time that the Western world didn't really benefit much from monogamy. The biggest money that has been made from relationship scams in the last 20 years thereabout has been after effects of broken homes. Only the agriculture faculty in all the federal universities in this country, if they really produce food, like they really do agriculture, not theory agriculture, practical agriculture, there will be a whole lot of food everywhere. We will not have famine in this country. For me, it's more of value. Monogamy, polygamy. The truth of the matter is that we have seen the after results of polygamy, and we have seen the after effect of all the monogamy in the world. And if we have to use result to compare, I will tell you for a fact that monogamy has not been successful.
It's about to go down.
Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of The Next Conversation. This is our debut episode, and for that reason I'm going to be telling you what to expect when you get to watch any episode of The Next Conversation. So, for one, you expect to be enlightened, to get ready to unlearn and to learn, and then to be liberated, because the conversations we're going to be having here are conversations that answers questions that boggles your mind. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things, the things that people are scared to talk about. And it starts right now. I'm going to be having an amazing conversation with someone that I respect so much. He is the brain behind this whole idea, the idea to enlighten, the idea to learn, unlearn, and liberate. He's here with me in the studio, and he is none other than the delightful and amazing Kingsley Ebusatali, most popularly known as Comedy in Action. Welcome.
That introduction. Hello, guys. Thank you for joining us. But the introduction was almost getting me away. I was getting all carried away and all that. Ivy is always so delightful, so subtle when she talks, and I think she's one of the highlights of the show. She's one of the faces you should look forward to. One of the faces you look forward to. But thank God we're finally doing this.
Yes.
We're getting to have these conversations. Like I always tell you, we should always try and make sure we have conversations as much as possible.
I agree.
Any kind of topic, any kind of discourse, we need to talk about these things. People need to know some of these things.
Right.
People don't know a whole lot like they are supposed to know. But we're here now, and the next conversation will do a whole lot too. Answer a whole lot of boggling questions in the mind of our teeming population, most importantly, our black population, which is the African continent. I welcome everybody. Once again, I'm Comedy in Action, and it feels good to have you here with us. So let's go.
So, people are going to be watching right now and they're like, conversation, what is that conversation? What are these people going to be talking about? Don't worry, we've got you. But right before we delve into what it is in total, I'm going to be having to ask you about what life has been for you. What was family like? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? When we ask all of these questions, we get to give people an idea or background of where you're coming from and, where you're going, your journey so far.
Yeah.
So tell us about life. Tell us about family, your parents, talk to us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a very beautiful ride as a human, as far as I can remember, my full consciousness as a human, knowing that okay, I'm a human being. I grew up with my grandmom.
Okay.
I want to say I'm a product of a broken home.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to leave when I had to come and stay with my grandparents when my grandmom was, especially when my parents split. I think I was about 18 months old. So you imagine being born in Lagos and you happen to get to transfer all the way to the village, in Ekpoma, Edo State. So basically, I'm one of those children that had life the hard way, the typical African child way. And, I didn't really have that opportunity to enjoy the family structure as it is,
Yeah.
as it's supposed to be, or as it was meant to be. I grew up with my grandma, growing up in the midst of uncles, aunties, and basically everybody was just doing their thing, and everybody was just doing their business. While you, the tiny one in in the midst, you just also try to find your way of how you just mix up, and find your way along the line. But one thing I know is that growing up the way I grew up has actually taught me, self-reliance, because as at a tender age of, being in primary five, I remember very well, I was already being given school fees to go and pay yourself. So that's one of the
Wow.
positives I took from growing up. Like I don't think it was necessarily trust, but Alma for himself. So
Right.
we don't give you school fees. So if you like, go chop them. If you like, go waste on your business. So you have to go know that this is what you want. This is you want
Yeah.
education. So I didn't need somebody to remind me. So that's one of the things I took from growing up. Even when I had to do my work, I was giving money to write work and NECO, but my little brain told me no, do work and jump, and it was risky, but I had to do it.
Yeah.
It would be bad of me to take away the positives and also not look at the negatives, because when I look at my life today, I got to a point in life where I discovered that all I knew, necessarily not all, but a whole lot of the things I knew were not so true and were not so right or correct, like the way we are supposed to be raised as humans, especially when you look at the family structure, when you look at many of us, like I am used to the growing up in the survivor way. I'm used
Yeah.
to, the average typical African child who is built on survivor. It's just go out there and survive. Nobody cares how you do it, but you just try to survive. You're trying to figure out your life as the day goes. Not like there is this template. Some persons are fortunate to have a template already placed down for them. For instance, you have, a child that is probably raised by maybe an educated parent or an exposed parent or a
Mm-hmm.
knowledgeable parent. You already have a template. Okay, by this, you are doing this. By this years to this age, you're probably doing sport, probably learning one or two crafts. No, we didn't have that kind of opportunity. We were just, if as an African child, if you are too lucky and fortunate, maybe you just have a parent that provide and protect. But the guidance is not always there. The kind of upbringing the average human, especially the inexperienced human that have never been here before, is supposed to actually get to get. We didn't have all of that because of how we grew up, but we still managed to, like, patch up all of these things. And you even get to a particular age in your life, or a particular point, you discover that all the things I think I have even known, I've not even known anything. I've
Mm-hmm.
not even, I've not even touched half. Like all the things, especially a lot of things I know, they're even wrong. They're not even all correct.
Right.
You now look at the academic system that it's being used here in this part of the world. The African child, doesn't get that kind of education that suits them. Every system, every society have their own way of doing things. Like the African way is the African way.
Right.
And sometimes when I look at the amount of time we spend in a classroom trying to read about some certain kind of things, trying to study about some certain kind of things, I feel a child is not that dull to spend this amount of time, probably studying about insects and diagrams.
Yeah.
I, for one, because at least I have gotten to the level now where I'm able to also raise my own kids. I have two. Now I should be able to correct a few of those mistakes that, I felt were visible where we were growing up. Like for me, I feel the time that we spend on academics, reading and writing and all of that is a whole lot for a human. I
Okay.
don't think the human is that dull to, for example, what will I be studying from primary one to primary six? I don't know if they have touched that curriculum, but that's the
Yeah.
curriculum that I used. Imagine just 6 years, primary one to six. What are you studying? Integrated science, social studies, mathematics, English for that amount of years. And you get into the secondary school for another 6 years again. Let me say approximately 5 years. You are doing probably a slightly higher version of that same thing you did in primary
In
school.
primary
Most times they always joke about this things or say, when you're in the university, you're in the secondary school, your lecturer tells you, when you get to university, they'll teach you. And when you get to university, lecturer says they were supposed to teach you in
Teacher
the
in
in
secondary
secondary
school.
school. You get those
Yeah.
kind of so those are things I feel needs to be adjusted. At some point in a child's life, there should also be self-awareness. A lot of things on self-awareness. That's why I prefer a bit of, let's say, 40% academics, 30% coaching, then maybe another 30% on mentorship. You know, let's let the child get to a particular point where they, aside studying about, their environment, let's that child also get to have self-awareness. It's unfortunate that if you take the microphone now and camera and go to the street and ask a lot of persons who they are, a short story about themselves or the little thing they know about themselves, they will not be able to say much because not everybody really know what they're all about, what their journey is all about. You see how poor in terms of knowledge of self, of the atmosphere of things like numerology, astrology. Not a whole lot of our young guys can sit down comfortably 5 minutes and talk about these things
Okay.
boldly and say they have an idea of how these things work. You can sit a child of like 15, 20 years down and try to like find out what's your zodiac sign and all of these things. People sometimes try to trivialize these things, but I don't think you should trivialize them. I feel there's always this connection between everything in life. As far as it is a natural creation, there's a connection between us and the moon, the sun, the stars. You understand? Even the natural element, water, air. There's this connection. There's no
Yeah.
way you can try to discourage or downplay it. There's a connection with it. Even in the African sense, there's a connection with these things, humans and the universe. There's a way it connects. And most of the time, it's not something I feel somebody can even teach you. It's just probably just point you in the right direction and say, go and study. So I'm even just going to make it a, like an assignment for our viewers.
Yeah.
These days is quite simple. The social media makes everything so simple. There's a TikTok, and I recommend the TikTok for you guys because TikTok is like a school.
Right.
Yeah, TikTok is like it depends on
I
how you use
agree.
it. If you're using your TikTok like for cruise, dance videos, comedy, no wahala. But you see the search engine on TikTok, if you can impute any thought in your mind into it, there must be about 4 to 5 videos that can, you know, explain and open up your mind on this kind of topics. Numerology, astrology, things like genealogy. Many people don't understand that some traits that you have today could have been traits that your ancestors, your fathers, your
Yeah.
forefathers, great grandfathers had. You understand? It's not just you didn't just find yourself here. That's one thing I try to like explain to people when I have this kind of conversation. You didn't just find yourself here. You came through a source. You came through a source, and your immediate source is your father. You understand? And your father's source is your father's father. You get, these are genealogy. This is studying about your family tree, understanding about your family, how you guys got to be here. For example, I did a little on myself, and I just asked my father a few questions about his father. And from what I heard, I discovered that there is a bit of it in me. I even look at my son now and I see a bit of my father in him. These things just don't, not something you just can just write off. Something that you should pay attention to on self-discovery as a person. You know, when you look at all of these things, that you know that okay, this is the journey, this is where we are coming from, this is where we are going to, this is where we are presently. So these things are one of those things I feel the average child should have an idea of. This should be the core of our educational system, you know, and there is no way also you can take away the African culture out of it. Because for me, I feel culture is like the closest way to a man's to the roots of a man's existence. If I'm as a black man, if I want to actually know how did I get here, I have to go through the cultural way. I think if a white man wants to also do the same thing, they go through their culture. They have their cultures, we have our cultures. So all of these things we have to look for a way to put all of these things together and raise people with this kind of template. You know, we need to go back in time and ask these questions and find out. Don't fall for that propaganda that your ancestors were not intelligent people, they were not smart people. No, it's not possible. It's not possible that a whole generations of about 200 years old, 300 years old, didn't really have, a whole lot to offer. These guys survived. They were doing as good as possible. We are sitting on a soil, for example, now that is about 500 years old. And there was a time it was the biggest civilization on the world. I'm talking about the Benin Kingdom. That is where we are presently sitting on right now. It was the biggest civilization in the world at some point. And even as far back as at the 17th, these guys already understood the concept of setting up armies. They already understood the concept of, protecting yourself, protecting your territory. They already understood the concept of, technology. As far back, you for somebody to have the wisdom that you light up a city at night, and they used what they had. If you try to agree and understand these things, you will discover that whatever we have today is just a modernization of what has been.
True.
You get, so there's no way you can run away from the past. There's no way you can deny the present because this is definitely what is leading us to the future. So for me, I know that if I had it better, for example, it could have been a whole lot easier for me, just like a whole lot of African kids, a whole lot of African children, that grow up with the same reality. So, like I always say, the average black child is built on survivor. And I think survivor is like one of the worst ways to build somebody. Like imagine all you just have to do every day is to wake up and survive. So it's like you just want to survive. So if you had to survive at all costs, then the next person that is close to you is not safe.
True.
It means you can even take off the person. So being raised on survivor without a bit of guidance here and there hasn't really done much. But I just use this kind of mediums to, advocate that parents, business of raising kids is a whole lot of business. It's a whole lot of work. Like it's not just something you just, wake up and start doing. It's a whole lot of work. That's why I still believe that both parents do a better job.
Yeah, so you've said a whole lot. You've talked about your family, how you grew up. I'm pretty sorry that you had to grow up that way. But there's a very popular saying about people who grew up with their grandparents. They say that they grow up to be very wise and very enlightened, and truly I see that in you right now. I'm sure if if you had grown up cuddled and protected and sheltered from the world, you probably would not have known as much as you do
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So I think that that's not such a
Yeah,
bad
yeah, yeah.
thing.
To a large extent, the military kind of growing up
Yeah.
is it helps,
Mm,
but if you miss it, you miss it. You
true.
get me? A whole lot of us could have been worse out. I like if I want to describe the way we grew up, you wouldn't want to imagine it. It was so like I look at the way I grew up. I look at the way my kids are growing up. It's a whole lot of contrast. Do you
True.
understand?
It's
But
different.
we just knew what we wanted from the very get go. Like we just knew that okay, we wanted to be great, and we'll just do everything possible to. And not everybody is lucky enough to get that kind of eye opener at an early age without
True.
somebody sitting them down. For example, you know, the idea of reading books,
Mm,
not the textbooks. The beautiful way, one of the beautiful things about life as a growing person is when you read about life from other people's perspective. That's what
true.
books does. You get, for example, now I have kids now. I can as well say, okay, from 10 years, you have to read this amount of books. It makes it
Yeah.
easier.
True.
That's why I feel it makes it easier when you read books. People like, for example, we're doing this podcast now. To a large extent, what I am saying here is my life experience and what I have seen.
Hmm.
It's an equivalent to a book. You get so
Right.
when you get to read books on people's experience, even before now, books that were written in the 80s, in the 70s, and all of that. When you read such kind of books, it helps you to know what you are supposed to know at every given time.
I
And all of
agree.
this kind of guidance are what parents do. That's what we didn't get. That's what I feel parents should understand that at some point, family is the only way we can make society better.
Right.
Family is one of the ways we can just, because if you are complaining of a terrible society, the only way you can actually correct it is not by going to talk to somebody that's already damaged. It is on you to do the little you can do from your home front. Replicate yourself. You tell yourself the truth. Are you a good person? Yes, I'm a good person. I
Mm-hmm.
replicate myself in my kids, that my
Right.
kids go back to society and
Mm-hmm.
replicate these good norms, integrity, all of the
Honesty and
whole
all of
honesty and
that.
all of the
Mm-hmm.
whole. So that's why having to be raised by family, father, mother,
It
grandfather,
helps
grandmother, in most of the cases, as many as possible. Like they say, it takes a community to raise a
to raise
child.
a child. I
But
agree.
most of the time, we just tend to figure out life by ourselves.
Hmm.
It is good if it comes out well, but
Not every
not
time.
every time.
True. So, in all of these conversations, you talked about numerology and astrology and genealogy. And I promise you that if 100 persons started watching the show, as soon as they heard astrology, numerology, people are scared of the truth in this part of the world. I assure you that out of 100, maybe 10 people left already, and they're like, oh no, my pastor said. So I want to know what the whole thing about numerology, astrology, genealogy is the more simpler one, trying to go back to your ancestors, trying to find your roots, trying to know what happened in your father's father's mind, and all of that stuff, right? So let's talk about astrology and numerology and their correlation to religion. So, as a Christian, in your opinion, right, for someone who grew up in the church, who had a very religious childhood or a religious life growing up, there are lots of them who are going to be watching right now. Do you think that you would still encourage them to, get to know a bit about this phenomenons, numerology, astrology, get to explore it? And how does this whole thing correlate with religion? What's the connection? Are there any real connections, or you think that one should be forsaken for the other?
No, everything works together for good. Even Bible
Mm-hmm.
said that. You understand? And for me, I feel if somebody does not even have an idea of who they are, have an idea of what the world is, and have an idea of how people operate, because numerology is what the numbers say. relating to you as a person,
Okay.
your existence, your future, your date of birth, and all of this. Like I said, to do you better if you go and do your own research. It doesn't have to be through books, it can be through videos. Just
Yeah.
use the comments, use the search engine on either Instagram, Facebook. You might not get the best from Instagram and Facebook because the algorithms does not
Yeah,
favor
the
a whole lot of
censored.
things like that. Yeah, I've
True.
noticed it. It was on TikTok came about that we started seeing videos like this talking about even colonialism, neo-colonialism, slavery. A lot of things were hidden. Yeah, the
Right.
algorithm of TikTok is a bit freer. So just do your own research. But what I know is that everything works together for good. And if you don't have an understanding of how the world works, you don't have an understanding of what the sun is saying, the moon is saying, the air, the rivers, all of these things, then you don't even first and foremost have a business with being religious. Because from what I understand, religion is man's quest to get closer to his maker.
Yeah.
That's one thing I understand about religion. It's your quest to I want to get close to, just like you sit yourself down and you see this is a work of art. I was made, I was
Right.
created. Who made this?
You want to
How did
know
I
that
get here?
person.
You
Okay.
understand? And how did I get here is not rocket science. You have to first of all know who gave birth to you,
Mm-hmm.
who gave birth to who gave birth to you. You
Which
must
is
pass through
genealogy.
these processes.
Okay.
If you don't know yourself, you cannot say want to know God. Because it
Right.
takes you to sit down and ask yourself, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose as a human being? Like the person that made this, what did he make me for? This
True.
after understanding how the world works, how everything is placed, you now ask yourself, I am in between this whole thing. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do to the trees? How am I supposed to treat the trees? How am I supposed to treat the sun? How am I supposed to treat the waters? These things are God's creation. And
Right.
after you have done all of these things, that's why I just feel that numerology, astrology, and astronomy, and all of these things are what the average human being is supposed to know,
To know.
even before delving into religion and wanting to know God. But unfortunately, in this part of the world, we don't really practice religion the way it's supposed to mean. Like I just said just now,
Yeah.
wanting to know God. I feel it's supposed to be more of like a personal relationship.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think in Africa we don't really practice religion as it should be?
Where we live, if you are vulnerable with information, like you don't have a whole lot of information, the person that has more information than you will always want to exploit.
True.
What I feel is that the persons that own the information, for example, this whole numerology, astrology, and all of that, if you are very good with it, you can even be a prophet. I can take your numbers and tell you a few things, and you'll be like, oh, I've seen vision for me. It's just basic knowledge of
Yeah.
little things. But because I have this knowledge ahead of you, I can
It makes you
turn
seem
it around and
supernatural.
manipulate. You get
Mm-hmm.
me? So for me, I was born in the church. I was raised in the church. I am a proper church boy. I did everything that you know one's supposed to do with church work, from a tender age, even the whole talent that I have today, everything I learned from church. But one of the things I saw about church is that church is supposed to be like a community. It's an avenue to bring people together.
Together.
You understand? But the most of the people that are at the helms of affairs, like the pastors, the bishop, the apostles, they haven't really been able to do much to like make people understand that God and man relationship is supposed to be a one-on-one thing. You understand? It's not this middleman. Some
Mm.
people, if they don't see their pastor, they can't pray. They
Yeah.
don't see their pastor to hear what pastor said about God, said what God told pastor. No, it's not supposed to be like that. God created your pastor. God created you. So you should
Right.
be able to create a channel that you know talks that shows that level of spirituality, which is you and God. And most times people feel you now be in a trance, God will now appear to you, will now have discussions. No, sometimes it's just how you treat what God created the waters, the land, the animals, human activities, being a humanitarian, taking care of what God, put here. Because God put us here to dominate.
It's about to go down.